Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War, Warhammer 2, Quick Magic gameplay. This time around we are playing as the forces of Brettonia against the Dark Elves on Carrick Buftar. So, obviously I'm psyched for the buffs that Brettonia is going to be getting tomorrow. Got some Brettonian games. I haven't really actually played that much Empire lately, but I'm definitely looking forward to their changes as well. Really looking forward to those buffs, and probably you're going to be seeing a lot of gameplay for those two factions over the next few days, perhaps even weeks. So regardless, this still pre-buff, of course. For my Lord, it's a pretty conventional build. For my Lord, I did bring the Fan Enchantress. You can see her here with Earthblood, with Regrowth, Mist of the Lady, Life Bloom, Arcane Conduit, Favor of the Fae, and Chalice of Potion. So pretty solid sort of composition against Dark Elves. You can heal yourself, you can provide all these sorts of buffs and debuffs, and it's great. For my front line, it's pretty cheap. You've got Men-at-Arms and Shields, who are not yet expendable, but soon will be. 2 units of Foot Squires to deal with some enemy armor, especially Blackguard. Obviously, they won't win, but they can apply some pressure. These guys are getting a drop in price next patch, which is really amazing. I'm really looking forward to that. Going to make them much more accessible. And the Holy Wardens of Lamais and Tal to counteract Witch Elves and Sisters of Slaughter. Sisters of Slaughter are also taking in some nasty nerfs next patch, so there's a lot of changes coming in that I'm really looking forward to that I think will help quite a bit. In the second line, I do have 2 Peasant Bowmen with Fire Arrows, once again to counteract enemy Witch Elves, to counteract Sisters of Slaughter a little bit, as well as to apply some pressure to units such as Hydras, which honestly I didn't anticipate in this matchup, but my opponent actually brought not 1, but 2, so including the Chill of Sontar, so that ought to be really interesting. Outside of that, we do have a single unit of Grail Guardians on one in the back, supporting the Fae, 3 units of Grail Knights, as well as the Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis, who are the regiment around Knights Errant. And I do think these guys are really solid. They're not getting any buffs or changes with the upcoming patch. None of these units are. None of these cav units are at any rate. But I'm nonetheless looking forward to seeing some of the changes for Brettonia. For my opponent's build, you can see he does have a unit of Dark Riders with repeated crossbows here. Another reason to bring the Peasant Bowmen. Honestly, they're not accurate, but they do quite a bit of damage per shot. And against lightly armored troops like Dark Riders, they will do a lot. I've essentially learned my lesson since the game where my opponent brought the Raven Heralds, and I had nothing to counter them. For the rest of my opponent's build, you can see a cheap front line with some Black Ark Corsairs, the Helibroni, Sisters of Slaughter, and 2 Witch Elves, so it's a pretty decent sort of Berserker core here, which is a real major nuisance and definitely a big threat. But honestly, against my infantry, I should be able to hold okay. The biggest problem is going to be the two Manticores, almost called two Hydras. If they're able to get on top of my infantry, they will dumpster them incredibly quickly, force them to rout, and then my opponent will probably be able to kind of pick apart my cats. So I definitely have to be wary of that. My opponent also does have 2 units of Dark Sharded Shields, so good choice I think against Brettonia, because Brettonia does bring some shooting usually. They'll be able to do okay. A single unit of Cold One Knights for AP, and of course, like we discussed, the Hydras, including 1 Chill of Sontar. Tomorrow we will be seeing the Charybdis, which our Charybdis, I'm not entirely sure if it's going to be good or not. I don't really think it's got that much of a niche in the Dark Elf roster, but we will see. Finally, a Sorceress of Beasts, who of course has Flock of Doom and Wisdom's Wild Form, as well as the Amber Spear. Interesting choice, something I wouldn't really bring against Brettonia. She also does have Andripol's Black Horror, as well as Arcane Conduit, so pretty cool assortment of abilities here. Flock of Doom, very potent against Brettonian Chaff, and so we'll definitely see how things go. Regardless, you can see me inching forward slowly but surely, kind of working my cavalry to the front, keeping my main force of Grail Knights here hidden away from these Dark Riders. I really don't want my opponent getting good shots into me. And you can see, our lines are slowly but surely inching towards each other. Both of us kind of posturing, positioning. My opponent trying to set up a nice little counter to our Grail Knights here, and the Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis, who are of course significantly inferior to Grail Knights, and they'll get torn apart pretty badly, even by Helibroni, for example. Nonetheless, you can see my opponent does try to push up to get some of his breath attacks off. He isn't going to breath my Foot Squires. You're getting a nice little sort of attack on my Wardens and on my Foot Squires here, so melting a lot of my HP in just 2 breath attacks, so getting some very good value. I should have been paying more attention and pull these guys back to ruin my opponent's angle there. Fortunately, I did not, and so we paid the price there. But nonetheless, you can see the War Hydra losing immense amounts of HP incredibly quickly, losing already down about 800 HP in the space of just a few seconds to 2 trash infantry units. The fire arrows are honestly not something to write home about, and you can see it's having a really bad day. Regardless, my opponent over here does manage to pull out with his Cold One Knights, intercepting my Grail Knights who were skirting along the edge. I actually charge the Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis into the Sisters of Singing Doom, who are of course the terror-causing Witch Elves, pull Men-at-Arms in from the flank, and then turn the Grail Knights in to collapse on these Witch Elves. And now you might be thinking this is a really stupid idea. Witch Elves do cause Rampage and all that sort of stuff, but I actually don't care that much about Rampage. I did hit these guys with Favor of the Fae, hitting an Earthblood on this whole group, and I've got the Fan Enchantress coming in with the help of these Grail Guardians, ready to apply pressure, and they should be able to beat this group in melee. Anytime my fire arrows are going to continue laying a withering fire down on my opponent's troops. They're trying to push forward. You can see orange zip balls, black horror being used here on my foot squires, and it's going to do a lot of work. And you can see here it's just melting these guys. The poor holy wardens, who of course have very low armor, are going to suffer horribly. And so very bad sort of positioning there for me, very bad awareness, and it's only getting worse on the flanks, where you can see my 2 Grail Knights getting shot to death by the Dark Riders, by the Dark Shards earlier, just taking a huge beating. Nonetheless, though, you can see my peasants, of course, courageous as always, moving forward and unloading on this Shelf Centaur, just leveling its HP. You can see it loses about 1,000 or more HP there in a few seconds to those fire arrows. Here in the pits, although we are definitely losing some of these units, my opponent is hitting me with a Flock of Doom. These guys will hold. Rail Guardians are completely going to dumpster Sinister of Sing Doom or Scissor of Slaughter. They really don't stand a chance. They're not built to kill these sorts of troops. The Cold One Knights, while doing okay, and definitely my Grail Knights here being routed off, are still doing all. We're still doing all right. And you can see I do pull the Fey Enchantress clear to chase these Dark Shards and apply some pressure elsewhere. Anytime you can see the Shelf Centaur pushing in on these Peasant Bowmen, it stops to do a breath attack. Big mistake. It really shouldn't have done that. And as it starts casting, it's actually getting interrupted by those volleys of fire, and it gets boned down by peasant bows. So really be careful. Shelf Centaur here is shattered, having achieved very little to peasant bowmen. In the pits here, in the meantime, the Grail Guardians holding their own, and a nice little Comet of Cassadora or Chalice Potions goes down, nuking these Witch Elves, nuking the rest of these Cold One Knights, and of course the Grail Guardians are not going down with the fight. They are doing an absolute number on these clowns. The Witch Elves, of course, getting slaughtered. You can see a nice little explosion of infantry there as the defenders charge into the rear. The Grail Guardians still holding their own. They're still over health models, very tanky. And you can see I'm now starting to open fire on the War Hydra here. My opponent is hitting me with the Flock of Doom, so not a bad choice against the peasants. But you can see the Hydra just having a terrible time against the fire arrows. In turn, I'm not having the greatest time with my knights. Honestly, I was a little slow on the uptake, charging into my opponent's rear here against the Black Arc Corsairs, charging into the Dark Shards, all those units. And I'm paying for it. These Grail Knights are getting torn apart. You can see they're falling because to those Witch Elves, so definitely some powerful play there for my opponent. I should have been much more wary of that. I should honestly probably charge into the Witch Elves to dumpster them quickly. But, hindsight 50, or hindsight 50-50, hindsight 2020, so it is what it is. Regardless, you can see the defenders here pulled clear. These spears are not going to last too long. Neither are these Sisters of Slaughter. They're getting mown down slowly but surely. And the Knights actually do get a nice little charge into the Dark Shard. So my opponent's army, which was seconds ago doing really well, is now slowly but surely getting sort of chipped away at. I'm also firing away at these Dark Riders, putting some hurt into them. You can see the Foot Squads rallied, and they'll be able to do okay against these Black Arc Corsairs, who do rout the Grail Knights, but they're buying me time. That's all that matters. You can see the Supreme Sorcerers here chasing these Foot Squires, still in 55 models. So we do still have some potent presence on the field. It's just, a little difficult here and there. The Grail Guardians still very strong. These Men-at-Arms still have some models left on them. And honestly, despite them being a pretty crap unit, they should still be able to take on all these troops. Over here, the rallied Grail Knights just keep coming back, and of course, with their perfect vigor, they will never be doing badly. They run through these Dark Shards. My opponent's Witch Elves do get a snare there, but I actually just don't care. I throw the Fey Enchantress in here, and I start draining away at these Witch Elves. We get the Grail Guardians in there, who will do so well with the favor of the Fey. And start chipping away at these Witch Elves and doing quite the number on them. They're not paying attention, or my opponent isn't focusing on them. He's too focused on the Grail Knights, and so these Witch Elves are getting melted and having a really bad time. Anytime the Foot Squires do rout off the Black Arc Corsairs, and the Bowmen do rally, and they're going to start unloading on this War Hydra. Similarly, the Foot Squires over here did rally. They were able to push off the caster there. And although the War Hydra is trying, I think, to get a breath attack, I don't entirely know what my opponent was thinking here. It's getting absolutely shredded by the Peasant Bow fire. These guys are just so solid. My opponent, you can see, trying to get, I think, an Amber Spear off. Not much I can... Oh, I could have probably positioned better. But you can see it. Not the perfect aim. Not a perfect angle, and it does kind of just ricochet through the unit. The War Hydra does get nuked quite a bit, but it's still alive. So, I don't know. So far, it's been a fair-ish trade. And then back to Witch Elves collapsing. Grail Knight's still around. The Defender's still around, though very low. And it's definitely a fight right down to the wire at this point. You can see my Men-at-Arms over here still pushing on, trying to mop up all these units. I actually made the Cold One Knight's rout through sheer presence. That is how strong these Men-at-Arms are. That is how terrifying they are at 3 chevrons. And now they're definitely not expendable. How dare they? But you can see over here they actually shattered the Helroni just by gazing at them very sternly. This point my opponent is, you can see the balance of power is pretty bad, but at the same time, my opponent still does have some tools. He does some magic on the Supreme Sorcerers. He still does have a Hydra. My archers, who were doing so much damage to it before, are dead. So, it's still, there's some, I think, still a little bit of comeback potential. Nonetheless, you can see we're just gap closing so quickly on the War Hydra here. My opponent, I do believe, casting at Wisdom's Wild Form, which will help against Brettonia. He does get a lovely breath attack there, roasting some of my troops, but we do get a nice round here. The foot squires are pouring in. Even the Fan Enchantress hits pretty hard against such bad melee defense. And you can see the War Hydra definitely getting taken to task here by the Knights. Not having the greatest of the day. Now, granted, Grand Knights are going to just get slaughtered here. They're going to shatter at 3 models. But it just doesn't matter. Some of the archers rallied. The Fan Enchantress is in there doing great work. My opponent's army is actually going to shatter here to army losses. A little surprising, but I think the Grail Guardians could have pulled it out in the long run just because they're such a potent unit. So, a Pyrrhic victory for Brettonia, and a nice little thing to sort of wrap up before the patch hits. For my opponent's build, I do think it was actually a really cool build. The War Hydras did surprisingly well against Brettonia. At the same time, they did surprisingly badly against the Peasant Bow, so I'm not entirely sure what to say. But they definitely did some nasty damage to my infantry. The changes to foot squire costs should definitely be helpful. I definitely think one of the things that might be a good idea with Brettonia is to bring some more cheaper cav, just to oversaturate, because you can beat Cold War Knights with just like a pair of Grail Knights. And bringing, say, an additional 2 Knights Errant or some Knights of the Realm might be a good idea, just to overwhelm the backline a little more decisively. Without having to, without risking Witch Elves. Maybe Mounted Yeomen, honestly, could be a decent pick as well. Especially once the drops come in for the foot squires, you can bring 2 foot squires, drop the men at arms, and you still have the money to bring a unit of Mounted Yeomen. So that could be really solid, I think, and help crush those backlines. You throw them in, deal with the dark shards, while at the same time you throw your Grail Knights in against, say, Witch Elves, and the Witch Elves will just collapse at that point. I do still think this is a pretty competitive build against Elves. They just have so much cavalry pressure. It's pretty awesome. As for my opponent, yeah, like I said, cool build. Great game. I do think it's pretty cool. Dark Elves are going to have actually a rougher time. Well, maybe. We'll see. Depending on how the Charybdis is. Or the Charybdis. I think it's the Charybdis. But depending on how that is, it's going to be a rough day for the Dark Elves, I think, with the Boast of Brettonia. But nonetheless, I do think we'll see how the Charybdis is. It might even the odds. Dark Elves are largely getting nerfed next patch, so we'll see. Regardless, good game to my opponent, Konos MGR here. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, any criticism, anything like that, be sure to share them, and I will respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.